companies that are now doing things that only nations could do, and a few companies now doing things that nations can't do.
Hi there, this is Bianca Lopes, and this is season 2 of Be in the Know, and I'm all the way in London on Identity Week with Don. Don, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Don, tell me, you have 2 titles, 2 organizations. You are the chairman of the Open Identity Exchange.
Yes.
And you are the executive director of Open ID Foundation.
That's correct.
So tell me a little bit about both, and let's actually maybe start with, tell me a little bit about Don.
So most of my career was in the data business. I spent a lot of time at LexisNexis.
Okay.
And managed their strategy and business development.
Before data was kind of a big word.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you do for school?
I actually did 2 things in school. I did psychology and library science.
Ooh.
Pretty boring, eh?
No, it's actually pretty great. I wish I did psychology and engineering. Because I feel like understanding people and then understanding systems is probably the best way to navigate the world.
Library science is engineering data.
And that's how you got into data back then.
Right.
And then how does your career evolve to get into identity?
Well, managing data systems is managing people, right?
Yeah.
The data about people. And so I found that fascinating, that intersection between how people behave and how systems work.
Yeah.
And the story of my generation, your generation, will be that tension between
the two. Where's the power?
That's right. That's right.
Where's the power shift between the two? And I find that often people get super excited about identity as if it was something detached to the human being. And a lot of the things that we're still doing is to manage human beings and the things that they're touching. So tell me how your identity career sort of progressed to get you now to be the chair and the executive director of these 2 organizations.
Sure. So LexisNexis began in the U.S., really taking paper-based and microfilm-based archives and digitizing them. It's ancient history now, but that was the basis of the identity.
It's not, because some people are still talking about digitizing identity and they're just still digitizing papers. I don't know about so much history.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I guess the point that you just made really is this engulf between the rapid monetization of identity and its enabling technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and those that are increasingly left behind. So we're really shifting in the world between companies that are now doing things that only nations could do, and a few companies now doing things that nations can't do.
Yeah.
And those companies have amassed this not only economic power, but data and analytics, et cetera.
It's kind of an interesting state of surveillance, protection, and who has the role to do what.
Exactly right.
Let's talk about one organization at a time. Why did you start something like
this? Long story short, I had sold my company. I was under a non-compete, so I couldn't do anything in the data industry.
Okay.
The one thing I could do was to work for a nonprofit. So I got called by a guy from Google and said, would you be interested in running this organization? Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating because it allowed me to kind of hit the reset button on my career and my contacts. So I moved from a kind of global perspective to be Silicon Valley oriented for the better part of the next 5 years.
Okay, is that where you're based now, Tom?
No, I'm based in Washington, D.C., but
so you're now near the government.
I've always been near the government. I went to school there, and D.C. is kind of halfway point between Silicon Valley and the EU and Europe.
So how has, since that phone call, the organization evolved, and what is the organization? Is it a non-for-profit? Is it a foundation?
The Open ID Foundation is nonprofit, technology agnostic, cross-sector, and global.
Okay.
What that enables it to do is to be seen as neutral and a fair arbiter of the standards which are intended to be global standards. OpenID Connect is a great example of that.
Okay.
Currently, 3 billion people use OpenID Connect.
And that's part of the work that started in the organization.
OpenID Foundation was the test bed for OpenID Connect.
So what is the organization composed of? Is it members? Is it it's a membership-based organization?
It's a membership-based organization. Its sole income stream is the contribution of its members. And I think that contribution is importantly both financial capital, but human capital. And the human capital thing is, in some ways, much more interesting. When is it that And why is it that it's in the interest of large companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft?
Those are your members?
Yeah, et cetera. How could it be in their interest to fund this kind of an organization?
To learn? To peak?
Well, really three things. One is to learn about what's happening in the marketplace before
it actually hits the market.
Before it actually hits the marketplace. Two, to shape the standard that's going to hit the marketplace. And three, to be able to slow it down or speed it up.
Okay, so how do you become neutral when you're an organization being sort of steered by that? And what is the role of things like regulators, and what is their involvement in an organization?
So I am I lead this team of rivals.
Okay.
So things only happen when you're able to find a consensus between very intense competitors. But the fact of the matter is that Microsoft needs to demonstrate to the marketplace that it can ingest Google identities as easily as it can its own. So over the last few years, what Google and Microsoft have done is jointly present at conferences talking about interoperability, which only happens at the identity space. Because unlike the outliers, Apple, Facebook, everybody else is dependent upon interoperability in order for ecosystems to thrive.
Of course. Thank you so much, Don, for the interview.
My pleasure.
If you want to know more about it, follow Don, follow Open Identity Exchange and OpenID Foundation. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.